Good afternoon, professors, guests, and fellow classmates of the Politecnico di Milano. Today we're going to present the analysis of our research called Hangzhou's Production Revival. Hangzhou is a city characterized by its rapid expansion throughout the years due to the increase of population. In terms of agriculture, it is a city most known for its silkworm farming, tea, rice, and paper plantations, plus taking advantage of the fish ponds around the city. Therefore, we made a visual analysis of how the farmland geometry and grid has changed with the growth of the city. In 1984, most of all the land was used for agriculture. In 2008, the city expanded, leaving less space for agriculture and more industrial sectors started to appear along the Jiangnan River. However, the city continued to expand till the present day, with more industrial sectors. At the end, we get this urban margin from the main populated centers of the city, leaving the rest for rural activities. On this occasion, we are focusing on the analysis of the behavior of production along these three samples, spread across a determined transit line that perfectly crosses through the agricultural area, the city center, and the industrial area. It is noticeable that agriculture has been pushed away from the urban city. That's why it makes us question how to encourage today's society to retrieve production into their everyday life.
In the present, they look like this, having the 1A more on the outskirts, the 1B on the middle urban tissue, and the 1C on the side towards modernization. To answer the previous question, we'll look closer to each sample. For these three examples, we could identify the land used for agriculture and for industries. Also, some unique features, for example, such as the old villages on 1A, the useful rooftop for gardening on 1B, and the universities and parks found on 1C. All of these elements made up the productive tissue we found nowadays. For this reason, each sample presents a challenge which we'll deal with, but give us an opportunity to develop. On sample A, it is the city margin, and it gives us the opportunity to slow the city expansion and protect the agricultural areas. On sample B is the lack of productive space, which deals with adding community production clusters. And lastly, sample C, the challenge is the big amount of residual space, giving opportunity to contextualize productive spaces. Following this thread, we intend to use 40% of the actual agricultural land for a protected agricultural park in the first sample, use 25% of the roof and residual open spaces in between buildings for agriculture in the middle sample, and lastly, develop 45% of the land for agricultural and educational purposes. Altogether, the goal is to incorporating urban farming. However, we can do it through three different strategies for each case.
Talking about the first strategy, we have a land with a lot of agricultural space and fish ponds, limited at the edge by the urban city, which is progressively expanding. Therefore, we propose using some land for agricultural park that would be protected and controlled, surrounded by a network of public transport and connected internally by paths and bridges, creating an area where people can enjoy and use these vegetable gardens and where the city can take advantage of the crops for selling it at different local markets. For the second strategy, in the city center, we find a very dense urban fabric with tall residential buildings and some industries. However, the spaces in between buildings are very poor and unfunctionably displayed. For this reason, we propose taking advantage of these areas in between the residences and making them productive with private and public community gardens. Additionally, use the big public buildings for more production of crops, water collection, and solar energy by taking advantage of their big rooftops. The union of these elements is what resumes the idea of productive clusters, further spread along the city. Lastly, for the third strategy, we look at a sample with a very educational character, including 9 universities and 5 school buildings. Therefore, the goal is to link education and production by creating a linear, productive strip that connects residual spaces and parks in between faculties and buildings, creating a recreational space for everyone, while at the same time giving opportunity for a space of research and technological development for the students and citizens.
Overall, looking at these productive strategies from a bigger scale, we conclude that each of them encourages today's society to retrieve production into their everyday life in different ways. Sample A is a big park where 100% of agriculture is protected and controlled. Sample B generates a scattered system of parks around the city, adding 5% of agriculture to this urban area. And lastly, sample C compounds a linear park system in which 30% of the open residual space can be used for agriculture. So these strategies could be repeated and reproduced along the city, creating one huge metropolitan park. At the end, by adding up 3 productive strategies developed for each of the samples, it generates one big metropolitan landscape for the city of Hangzhou. In this sense, we propose systems that could fit with the culture and ideas of the city, and that could be easily introduced for improving its landscape in terms of production. Small interventions that add up to generate a new landscape, because little steps bring up big changes. Thank you.
Thank you.